This video is about how to read and understand the new scientific posters from DKL and increase your confidence in navigating through this important resource so that you can have an informed discussion with medical professionals. So first of all, what is a scientific poster? A scientific poster is a visual presentation of research or scientific findings that's typically displayed at conferences, symposia, or other academic events, or it can be published in medical and scientific journals. And it serves as a condensed summary of a research project or clinical study that allows the researcher to showcase their work and engage in discussions with other experts in their field. And the purpose is really to attract attention and generate interest in new research or clinical study outcomes. So the content of a poster is generally organized into different sections, and we can see it here. It's typically organized to introduction, methods, results, and conclusions. Now, it's important to understand that a scientific poster is intended to be objective, unbiased, and scientific in nature, and it's really not supposed to be commercial or promotional in its essence. And because of that, it's generally written by a medical professional, practitioner, medical writer, or by a clinical study investigator. So let's now take a deep dive into this particular scientific poster. As you may know, DKL recently completed 2 clinical studies evaluating the safety and efficacy of several, or rather 2, of their dermal fillers. And one of the studies evaluated DKL-23, better known in the market as RadiaNt Derm. DKL-23 is the scientific name, and 23 refers to the concentration of hyaluronic acid in the dermal filler. So for this poster, we will be referring to it as DKL-23. So the next thing is that we want to now understand what's in the introduction of this particular section. The first part of the introduction deals with general information about hyaluronic acid and DKL-23, and then below you'll see the objective of the study, which is to collect and evaluate performance and safety data for DKL-23, and specifically for the nasolabial folds, or NLFs, which is what we'll refer to it later. Now let's zoom in a little bit and go into the methodology. Methods are really the parameters of the study, what we use to understand and rate the study. And what's important to understand, let's start first with the paragraph 1. There are a few aspects here. Number 1, that it is a double-blinded study. That means that both the patients and the clinical investigators are blinded to which products are being used. Number 2, that it's an intra-individual split-face comparative study. That means that within one patient, you have one side of the face being done with DKL-23, and on the other side of the face, you have Juvederm Volift. So that's within one patient, a split face, 2 products. Now, these patients are further divided into groups, and the groups are computer generated, and that means that it's randomized. Randomized means that in one group you have DKL on the left side, Juvederm on the contralateral side, and in the second group, the order of those products are switched. Finally, what's important is that this study was conducted at the CTC Center in Uppsala, which is Sweden, which is a highly reputable company. And all of these generally indicate that this is a high quality clinical study. And that's very important because their clinical studies can range in their quality, accuracy, compliance, and even the way that they're conducted, what kind of parameters. Next, it goes into the type of patients who were recruited to the study, the 2 products that were used in the study, and then what's important here is the days of follow-up. So 0, where the patient has the first injection, is known as baseline. Then, based on the evaluation of the treating investigator, the patient comes back in at 30 days. Now, keep in mind, the treating investigator is unblinded because they need to know what product is being used. They're actually injecting, so they are not involved in the clinical analysis at the end of the study. So if the treating investigator thinks it's necessary to come in for a touch-up, then they will come at 30 days. Otherwise, the key points are 90, 180, and 270 days. So this is a 9-month study. Next, it's important to look at the scales used to evaluate the nasolabial folds. So this is the wrinkle severity rating scale. This is a validated scientific scale, meaning that it's generally unbiased, objective, and more importantly, reproducible. This is the scale that you will see in most important and scientific studies for dermal fillers. Now, 1 is no visible NLF, continuous skin line, and 5 is extremely deep NLF folds that fillers alone may not be enough to get the desired effect. For this particular study, we use between 3 and 4 to get really accurate results. Next, we have the GAZE score. What's important to understand about the GAZE is that it's a little bit more of a subjective scale, asking about the global aesthetic improvement. It's asked both to the investigator and to the patient to understand how much improvement they see. So it's a little bit more subjective. However, it is used in many of the relevant scientific studies, and it's globally known. And it starts again with very much improved, where this is really the optimal possible cosmetic result for this patient. And then it goes to -1, which is worse. Then just finally, what does it mean per protocol? Per protocol is just a very concise, or rather precise, snapshot of the patient population, because out of all of the patients that come, not every patient is complying to the study. So we took the PP for this poster, which really gives you a precise snapshot of the results. All right, so now let's go ahead and zoom into the actual results, starting with the subject demographics. How do we understand these two tables at the top? First of all, N equals 48 is the study population. N means the number of participants in that study or in that sample. So there were 48 patients. And if we look here, we see that the median, which is the middle of the range, and then in parentheses, we have the full range. We're talking here about the age. Age was 57, range was 44 to 64. And we can see that 100% of them were female, or N equals 48. Remember, it's that population size again. Fitzpatrick skin type refers to the fairness of the skin of the patient. So 1 is the most fair that it can be, going all the way up to 6, which is the least fair. And in some cases you have actually more, but for this particular study, we had 6 types represented. Most of them fall within the quite fair range, and we can see that 100%, or 48 patients, were white. Then in the injection volume, it is in milliliters, and it's showing the median, the middle of the range, and then the actual range. So the initial treatment, we see 48 patients here, and the median range was 1 milliliter. And it's both, so this is for 1 patient each side, right? We don't know which side was which, but you can see, and what's most important is that the numbers are pretty much the same. The median is the same, and the range is very similar between the two products. And then again, for the touch-up, not everybody came for the touch-up, if you recall, so that's N equals 37, and 1 milliliter was the median for both products, and the range was, again, fairly similar. Now let's go into the actual results. So the first one that we are looking at here is the percent of responders, and that is showing us how many people responded that they have at least 1 point of improvement in the WSRS versus the baseline. So we can see here that actually DKL is starting off pretty strong. They sort of even out throughout the study, and then they end up with DKL being a little bit longer at that 9-month point. And what it's saying here is that, all right, at 30 days, You have up to 55% seeing that improvement in the WSRS, but then that really does go up. At least 1 point improvement is what we're looking for. And it does go up with between around 68 and 73% at the peak at 180 days. So between 68 and 73% of the patients are seeing at least a 1 point improvement in their WSRS score. Now here we're looking at the actual WSRS score. So if you recall, the higher the score, the more visible the nasolabial fold. So the descending line shows that there's an improvement in the WSRS score. And what we're looking for here is really the similarity at all of the key time points between the two products tested. So what we see here is a statistically significant improvement in WSRS at each time point versus the baseline, and then we see no statistically significant differences observed at any time point between those two products that were studied. Now let's look at that p-value. The p-value generally shows us the strength of the evidence. The lower the p-value, the better the strength of the evidence, the stronger the evidence. Now, it needs to be at p is less than 0.01 in order for this to be a relevant study, in order for it to be reliable. And as you can see, we are far below that at 0.0001. So that's a pretty strong evidence that we can see from that p-value. Now let's go into figure 3. In figure 3 here, we're looking at the GAZE score, and it's investigator rated in the top and subject rated below. As you can see, again, there's quite a similarity at all of the time points. Some places DKL is performing higher, but what's important to note is that the rate is generally the same between the investigator and the subject, meaning that there's consistency in the results and in the way that people see the results. Now we go to the satisfied and very satisfied. This is how we are rating the satisfaction of the subject. So only the patient is evaluating the satisfaction. And as you can see, at each of the time points, DKL and Juvederm are rated pretty much the same when it comes to satisfaction rate. Now, what is different here is the likelihood to recommend the product to friends and family. So let's look here at the very likely between DKL and very likely between Juvederm. It's pretty much the same, but actually we can see here a pretty significant delta between the DKL23 and Juvederm, with more patients of DKL23 being quite likely to recommend the product to friends and family. Now, something else that is also evaluated within the methodology is the safety. And let's talk about that just for 1 second. And before we go there, I just want to draw your attention to the before and after. So this is at baseline, and you see the 3 months. And if you look here at the nasolabial fold, you can definitely see an improvement in the appearance of the nasolabial fold. So now let's go into the safety measurements. Now, we're looking here for adverse events, serious adverse events, anything that might have led to the patient being withdrawn from the study. And what we see is that most subjects experience local tolerability symptoms that are generally expected in hyaluronic acid dermal filler treatment. So it can be things like swelling, bruising, redness, and tenderness, which means it's a little bit painful to the touch. And the median duration was between 1 and 4 days, with bruising having the longest duration. The majority of the symptoms, it's important to note, were mild or moderate in intensity. And what's most important to note is that there were no serious or unexpected AEs reported during the study, and no patients were withdrawn from the study due to any adverse events. So that's it for the results. Now let's just summarize the conclusions of the study. So we can see, first of all, here that DKL showed statistically significant improvement from baseline in the nasolabial fold WSRS at all time points evaluated. Then it goes on to say that the outcomes were comparable to Juvederm Brolift across all performance parameters, and that the higher proportion of responders of DKL, if you remember from that first graph, it does suggest that there may be better lifting capacity of the tissue. What's important to note also is that the duration of the study was 9 months and the improvement lasted for the duration of the study. Satisfaction was highly comparable between the two products, and that the treatment was well tolerated. So I hope that this has helped you to understand the DKL23 scientific poster and that you feel more confident. And we will be showing you now the DKL26 scientific poster.